I'm a tiny taggart in a brave new world, gonna free this town. If you didn't know about me already, well, you know it now. Hi guys, and welcome to Objectivist Girl. Today we have on Adam Kokesh. Hi Adam, how are you doing today?
Outstanding.
Awesome. So Adam, I gotta tell you, I was on the panel for voluntary virtues, and that's where I started the connection with you, but I'll tell you what, I was kind of disappointed by something you said during the show. Kind of really upset me.
Well, before I get to that, if I may point out something really exciting. We've got Adam versus the Man being interviewed by Objectivist Girl talking about voluntary virtues. I mean, this is some like insane libertarian fantasy comic book come to life. I love it.
That's pretty good. But I'm not letting you buy with this, Adam.
Wait, I can't change the subject?
No.
It's like that.
No.
All right.
You insulted Objectivism. I think you've got a deep-seated problem with Objectivism, and I think we should fix it today. Like, it's really important. So, Adam, what you said was that if I saw someone dying on a street corner, I wouldn't go all objectivist on them. I would just simply save them. And I gotta tell you, Adam, I would definitely consider saving them.
It's not. No, that's okay. You know what? I will say you're right. That was an unnecessary, essentially over-intellectualized ad hominem attack and misrepresentation of objectivism.
It
Absolutely.
is.
And based on my understanding, what I like about objectivism, but I shouldn't say what I like about objectivism. It's because objectivism means two different things for me. And
okay.
what I was making fun of there was the objectivism that is Randianism as a doctrine of everything Ayn Rand believed.
So you do know the difference. That's good.
Which is worthy of ridicule, as opposed to the beautiful concept that she identified but didn't invent of a way of thinking and analyzing the world, which I would consider myself.
Okay. So have you read David Kelly's book, The Unrugged Individualism, which is also the title of my upcoming album? No, you haven't?
I really wish I had more time for books. I don't really read books.
Okay,
well, to say.
I'll give you
I read news, I read blogs. I'm like, and I have to. I really have to make a deliberate effort to read books, which is really funny because I just wrote one, but it's very, very short.
Yes, this one's actually very, very short as well. I think it's only 15 pages, but it talks about benevolence.
15 pages?
Yeah.
Awesome. I could probably handle that.
Yeah, I'll send you a PDF of it. So, anyway, it talks about benevolence and the virtue of benevolence, which is not strongly talked about in Objectivism. Benevolence is something that not the entire philosophy agrees with, but the David Kelly aspect does. So you know there's two different schools of objectivism, right? Open and closed. So I consider myself an open objectivist because I'm an anarcho-objectivist. So I am an anarchist and an objectivist, and objectivism has led me to anarchy. And because of this, I believe in benevolence. And benevolence is one of those virtues for me. And did you notice have you read Atlas Shrugged?
Oh, of course. Yeah, that was a blast. Although that was a long book. But
it was a very long book. I'm surprised you had time for it.
It took me like 10 years. That's why I say it took me 10 years to understand libertarianism. No, I read it when I was running for office, and I read it very quickly because we were on the road, and it's a lot of dead cell space, between cell phone towers in northern New Mexico. So while I was supposed to be like, calling the list, making fundraising calls nonstop on the road, I was like, oh, signal went out. I'm going to read some Atlas Shrugged. And that was how I read it, and I breezed through it because it was such a compelling read.
And what did you think of it?
I thought it brilliantly captured one of the most important aspects of objectivism, which is self-realization, and it touched on a lot of more important, broader social dynamics and I think economic dynamics, and explained a lot of the relationships with the ways of thinking and the social dynamics and really essentially psychological dynamics that lead to bad policy, and how that is not just contrary to efficiency and things like that. And I would make the argument, who cares? Efficiency, like, it's not about more widgets when efficiency means medical technology too, and you're talking about lives saved. I mean, it's quality of life that you're talking about efficiency producing. But also how those policies really stifle self-realization in the human spirit. I think it captured that really well.
I'm totally with you on the quality of life and the human spirit. I talk a lot with my audience about human spirit, and I think that Atlas and Objectivism as a whole creates an environment and fosters an environment where people learn how to think in a better way, are able to apply reason and logic, and then expand their knowledge base through these ideas. And so I think it's really a starting point for any libertarian is to learn Objectivism first. And what do you think of that? Do you think Objectivism should come first?
One of the great inspirations for, my way of thinking or my view of the world is Stefan Molyneux. Rand is certainly an influence as well. Rothbard is probably the other major one. Maybe Ron Paul, not at the same level, but similar influence. But really,
and Jeffrey Tucker, right? And Jeffrey Tucker, right?
Jeffrey Tucker, yes.
Yeah.
But really, and he's been great. I've had him on my show several times, and he's actually helping me with my book, which I'm grateful for. But really, at the higher level of influence, Rand, Rothbard, and Molyneux, are the ones that have shaped that. And I certainly think of the core principles of Objectivism, and I would say that I'm Objectivist. I just don't, think it serves as a label, because in order for people to get it, they have to really experience it as well. It's not something you can say, well, hey, Objectivism is looking at the world rationally. You should do that. And people just go, oh, okay, well, I'm an Objectivist then. I mean, that's why Atlas Shrugged was so powerful, is because you experience that story, you get it at a personal level, and you understand what it means in terms of self-realization to live that way. And I think a lot of what I do with Adam versus Man, I would hope, is communicating that. It's certainly based on that in a way. But like Molyneux describes it as philosophy, Rothbard might describe what he outlined as political or social philosophy. And I think those are all different ways of describing, the same thing. And Objectivism has a unique intellectual value as a distinct body of thought. I just don't lead with it as a label.
See, I like to think of it as Objectivism is a philosophy for life, and Rothbard, it has like a political philosophy, because ultimately that's what anarchism is it is a political philosophy. It's just apolitical.
Right, and I love what you said earlier, that being an anarchist is a conclusion of your Objectivism. It's not, and
yes.
This is so important to separate libertarianism from other political philosophy, is that it's the rational one, and I mean that, and obviously that sounds arrogant to just put it that way, but no, it's the one that's not based on faulty arguments or emotional appeals or utilitarianism, but looking at an objective analysis, and it's important that we separate a conclusion, because libertarianism is really not it's not a methodology. It's not even a belief system. Like,
no, it's not. It just encompasses all of the genres.
Right. Well, no. Like, statism is, I believe in violence for organizing society. I believe in violent control. Right.
Right.
Whereas libertarianism is not the belief. It's not like a belief system that is, not that. It is just one conclusion of looking at the world rationally. Is violence doesn't help the world, help people get along, or aid human productivity in any way. In fact, pretty universally, violence between human beings reduces quality of life for everyone involved. And it's like, just looking at, finding that underlying principle, but most people don't even, aren't taught logic, aren't taught reason, aren't just taught, really, basic philosophical stuff that you would expect. And I think that I was fortunate enough to get in my relatively mainstream education. I went to government schools through middle school and a little bit of high school.
Oh, I'm
and then
sorry.
Most of high school was at boarding schools, but it was still conventional education mentality as opposed to unschooling or something self-guided. But I will say, like, I think always underlying that, I've been a self-educator. And that's the other thing that I think separates, it's one of the nice features of embracing objectivism. And I think about this in terms of like my studio and figuring shit out in technical aspects and camera formats and video formats and audio setups and microphone quality and different cables and software and like just all this stuff. I really don't have any particular desire for it, but I know that I can Google anything. I can figure it out and I can apply myself because I'm not caught on, you know, any self-imposed limitations, which is a lot of what holds people back from self-realization in the first place. I hope I'm not rambling too much, but this is,
no,
you know.
I was actually going to say that I agree with you, and the internet actually makes it easier than ever to be a self-learner. And that's why I started my channel, is because at this point in our society, if you're not learning things on your own, you're simply lazy. It's not lack of ability to acquire that information. It's not even really about time, because it's so easy to find a small article on anything. And it's ridiculous that people say that they don't have time to learn. And I get if you don't have time to read Atlas Shrugged, that's why I started my channel, is because not everybody has time to read Atlas Shrugged. I wish everybody did, and I hope everybody will make the time.
That should be your like official slogan, Objectivist Girl, because not everybody wants to read Atlas Shrugged.
That actually might be my new slogan. Right now, it's knowledge is not for all men, but for those who seek it, so keep seeking. So, no, I agree with you. It's libertarianism is something. It's a movement. It's not an actual philosophy. And I think that there's a bunch of different philosophies inside of this movement. And libertarianism to me is simply just, I believe in freedom. And it can be any level of freedom. It doesn't actually mean like anarchism or minarchism. It doesn't mean anything.
You're saying it means you can believe in freedom but not know what it is? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, you could totally, yeah. Libertarianism is a catch-all.
Well, because we don't pretend to completely understand it ourselves.
Well, no, but it's a catch-all. Like, objectivism is, what I say is objectivism is the way that I live my life, and anarchism is the way I would like my government to be run, which is non-existent.
Well, I want to go back, though. You said, we can talk about that, too, but I want to say something about, you mentioned people are lazy.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking for myself, too, it's not just that. I had one thing my parents did for me that was an incredible gift. Mm-hmm. They always told me I was smart and I could do whatever I wanted.
That's awesome.
Whatever I could accomplish, whatever I set my mind to. And we tell our kids over and over again, and the government school system beats it into them that is not true, and it's bullshit.
Exactly. Even the private schools do it.
The natural state of every human mind to be creatively engaged and clever and figuring shit out and assimilating information. We are what makes us humans is our intelligence, and that is robbed from people, not just by government, because it's deeper than that. It's social, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not something to demonize. Again, because I'm saying you're wrong to demonize people for being lazy when really it's this conditioning, I think, that's as much a part of it. Right. And I don't mean to demonize parents that do this or government that does this, because it's just part of the evolution of humanity. Like, this is what we are evolving to, is you know, some form of, I mean, you want to go really where this is going for me, this is about the asymptote of the human experience. We're on so many exponential growth curves now driven by technology, you know, and I know an exponential line never goes vertical, but as far as we can tell from down here in our, you know, pea brains, how are we taking over the cosmos and 3D printing rocket ships in our backyards, you know, the idea of government is going to be rendered obsolete. People are going to just, you know, it's going to be laughable within our lifetimes for so many reasons, and we're going to live as long as we want because we're going to get old age.
And the only reason it's not obsolete yet is because it exists. I mean, it would have become obsolete so long ago. We would have had things like the internet so long ago if it hadn't been here holding everybody back. And I want to touch on what you said about schools and how they treat people. One of the videos that I did that is hopefully one of my best watched videos, because it's really important, is why Objectivism rocks. And Objectivism rocks because it tells people you are awesome. You are awesome inside. And the reason that I know that knowledge is that existence exists outside of your perception is that everybody is awesome inside. They just haven't perceived it yet. And that's what Objectivism does. It reaches inside of you, it pulls your awesome out and helps you like take your awesome and do whatever you want with it. That's what I love about Objectivism. That's what got me involved.
Well, I mean, you think about that. Then what is the contrast? Like, what's the alternative? Well, no, you're okay. I mean, you do all right with government, and you kind of deserve to be subjugated. But
everything else is so condescending, right? Exactly. It's like, well, you suck for this and this and this reason, and we need to fix that. Like us, other human beings that suck for other reasons or the same reasons. Like, we need to control you and manipulate your mind so that you don't suck so much. Instead, Objectivism turns that on its head and says, screw that, you're all awesome. Like, you are all awesome and can do anything you want. It sounds like your parents. I'd love to have your parents on my show. They sound cool. So, when did you read Atlas Shrugged for the first time? You said you were on the road, but
it was 2010, and
oh, so not that long ago.
Yeah, no, I try to stay really humble, and I've been an activist, and I've been committed full time to activism to the point. I mean, I started with the Rock Veterans Against the War when I got out of the Marines in late 2006. Early 2007, I was in D.C. for grad school and dropped out to be a full-time activist. That's why I ended up living out of my car for a while. And I don't say this to by any count of pity, but or even to say that I was brave or committed or anything like that. But no, because I saw the value in what we're doing in waking people up. And for me, then it was more about anti-war activism and sharing my experience as a veteran to wake people up to the nature of war in Iraq specifically that was really being kept from people at that point. You know, I mean, we think about even today in the age of the internet, we think just back to 2007, 7 years ago, you know, the reality of what was going on in Iraq, I mean, still today, obviously, in Afghanistan, everywhere else the government's getting away with shit. They're getting away with it because they're able to hide it to a certain degree. We were bringing that to the public, and that was a big deal for me. And I was a libertarian at that point, self-identified, not a real libertarian, but self-identified, you know, mainstream conservatarian, because in high school I said I don't want to be a Democrat or Republican because that's lame. And that was it. That was really, there's leave me alone. That's my option. Oh, yeah, sign me up for that. I'll be a libertarian. And
I don't want to conform, so let's find the least conformist thing to do.
What's that?
I don't want to conform, so let's find the least conformist thing to do. I'm in high school, so let's be a libertarian.
Really? No, seriously. That's how I started. My parents, you know, really encouraged me to disregard or question authority in general. And I think I brought that into it as well. But I didn't have, at that point, you know, I mean, the most important thing Ron Paul did was get people to read Rothbard, who Ron Paul disagrees with on the, you know, practical application very strongly.
Yeah, most people don't realize that what Ron Paul is saying is pretty much Ayn Rand's Objectivism, like almost verbatim. No, a lot of what he says in his books is verbatim what she says.
There's a big overlap. But he was really bringing the Rothbardian perspective combined with what I would describe as now delusional constitutional minarchism. He did bring a unique philosophical grounding, and just publicly, and when I interviewed him, said that he was a voluntarist, and just disagreed with Rothbard in the ultimate application of that, or was compromising on that one particular thing. And like I said, I think the most important thing he did was get people to read Rothbard. And that's what really got people on a deeper level. And what Ron Paul did was brilliant activism, running for president and getting eyeballs to important issues. But he was a gateway. He was a gateway to and to Ayn Rand. But I think it was a lot closer. And I could be wrong. I've never went and done an analysis of Ron Paul's political platforms as compared to Randianism versus Rothbardianism. But he described Rothbard as a mentor, and I think he said that he was a fan of Rand, but it wasn't at the same philosophical connection. And in a sense, I would say, hey, we're all objectivists. Every human being is by nature an objectivist and strives to be an objectivist. We just all suck at it, just to various degrees.
I would agree with that, actually.
Anyway, so I was running for Congress in 2000. It was 2010. I was running for Congress, read Atlas Shrugged and Ethics of Liberty by Murray Rothbard, and that was what really did it. At that point, I was totally familiar with Ron Paul's work, but it was Ethics of Liberty, and Atlas Shrugged helped, but I would say Ethics of Liberty was much more central to me developing a philosophical perspective on the world. And it's obviously Ethics of Liberty. It's about the moral philosophical framework, and that was what really sort of that was a turning point in my understanding of the world.
That's interesting. Yeah, I actually have not read Rothbard yet. It is something on my list. I have about as much time as you do, probably. So.
No, I'm not saying about time. No, I don't fault you for not reading at all. And honestly, I say Rothbard's name all the freaking time. I haven't read that much of his work overall either. I can be totally honest. And all I had read when I went to jail, all I had read was Ethics of Liberty and Anatomy of the State, and I think I might have listened to readings of a couple other essays of his. That's it. I have Man, the Economy and State. I think that's his sitting on my bookshelf. Haven't read it yet because I kind of know what he's going to say at this point.
Who can read
but
that?
I read more New Liberty while I was in jail. That's all Rothbard read.
I read Atlas Shrugged, and I
recommend as that's fundamental book.
I read Atlas Shrugged, and the idea of reading Man, Economy and State scares me. And I read all of the Harry Potter books. I read J.K. Rowling, Lord of the Rings, which is huge, and I read Atlas Shrugged. But looking at it, Man, Economy and State, I'm a little scared. It's a little intimidating. Really intimidating. It's huge. But I think it's because
don't be scared. It's just economics.
Well, the thing is that the difference is
economics
that the difference is that her philosophy, Ayn Rand's philosophy, is fiction, and so but it teaches a lesson, but it's a story, and so it's easy to read and it's fun to read versus Man, Economy and State that's nonfiction and a lot of information.
I agree, and actually, Rand in that sense was a more effective activist because if you step back and measure it, obviously more people have read Atlas Shrugged than have read all of Rothbard's works, and that's sad, but it's true, and that you're right that it's been more effective. And if Rothbard had taken that strategy, he could have done the same thing if he was as good of a fiction writer.
Yes. Possibly
reach more people. But I still like the idea, and for some of us though, for those of us who are naturally inclined to objectivism, we want the book that lays it all out. We want the straightforward. We don't want the fiction. I don't want the fiction. I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I want the Cliff Notes. So that's kind of what I wrote. That's my book that I'm working on. That's coming out Independence Day. Actually, probably sooner than that. But it's my most concise possible manifesto. 62 pages right now, single space. It'll be 140 book pages. In a pocket constitution style, and every digital format for free, of course. I'm not trying to promote my book early, but I think
no, you're okay.
It's gonna be cool. I look forward to getting your thoughts on it.
Oh, good. Well, then you'll have to send me a copy. I love books. I'm a real bookworm. So, right now I'm reading. Well, I don't remember the title, but it's something about elections. So,
hey, maybe you've had a little too much to read.
I think I have.
I can't remember the title.
You're funny. That's cute. I like that. So, yeah, what made you want to join the military?
Hold on, I think it's in your.
What? What'd you say?
I'm sorry, I'm losing the connection. I'm losing the connection a little bit. Can you hear me and see me all right?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, sorry. Would you repeat the question?
Yeah. So what made you want to join the military originally?
I thought I'd get laid. I was a virgin. I thought it'd be a pretty easy way to get laid. I was like, Marines get laid all the time, don't they? Yeah. Well, I could learn how to talk to girls, but that seems really hard. No, I'll just be a paid killer instead. Yeah. Something like that. No, it was that. Honestly, that was only a humorous exaggeration of what was a subtle subtext. But no, I really wanted to. I really wanted to have my life on the line for something I believed in, and I thought it was, noble to defend people around me, and that's what I signed up for, and that was part of my disillusionment. But this is also why I'm very passionate about making sure that people understand what libertarianism means. And hey, I want to take the conversation back for a minute here, because
go for it.
You said you want to talk about libertarian. If libertarian means belief in freedom, freedom actually has an objective definition, and can be analyzed as such. And you can say either someone is a libertarian or they're not. Either they believe in freedom or they don't. And there's something dangerous and intellectually dishonest about what you said to say, no, well, whatever anybody say, oh, that's not that they don't understand it, they just understand it differently. And I understand maybe it's intellectually arrogant to say,
they're wrong.
I have all the answers.
They're wrong. That's why I'm not a libertarian. I refuse to subscribe to libertarianism. It's just like status. Statists believe in varying degrees of control, and libertarians believe in varying degrees of freedom.
No. I disagree. No. Every single statist believes that use of violence to control society is wrong. Now, if you're a libertarian, and libertarian is belief in freedom as an ideal, or belief in freedom as a virtue, and you understand that freedom is something specific, and there are different words you can put on it, but it is the exercise of your rights without forceful interference, right? So if that's the case, then if you say, well, I believe in freedom, except in some places I believe in using violent control, you're not a libertarian. You don't actually believe in freedom. You believe, because everybody believes in some freedom. By even the most hardcore statists, there is no end of the spectrum of absolute tyranny. That doesn't exist either, because you can't actually exert. Unless we're all in the Matrix. That's what that is. Matrix pods. Everybody's in a matrix. Everybody's in a little pile of pink goo, and then with their brain plugged into the machine, and all the energy from their body goes to feed the machine. That's the only thing on that end of the spectrum.
What you're talking about is an is-ought dichotomy. Now, there's a difference between what is and what ought to be. So, libertarians believe in different degrees of freedom. That's what is. What ought to be is the true definition of freedom, which is only anarchism. That is the only way that you are truly free, is if you are absolutely allowed to have all of your freedoms. Now, what is that they have used the word freedom, and you and I can forge ahead and try and fight and get the word back. I'm all for it, because I'm an objectivist, and I love my definitions more than anybody else's definitions, because my definitions are right, and they're based on actual etymology, but ultimately...
Yeah, no, and you can reject this.
Ultimately, what is that they do believe in freedom. They just don't know what that is. That's not what it is, but it is what it ought to be.
Well, I'm going to plant my flag on I'm a libertarian. Libertarian means belief in freedom, and freedom means something very specific.
You're not a libertarian. You're an anarchist, which is the epitome of freedom. That's the true freedom.
That's libertarian. If libertarian means belief in freedom...
Don't downplay what you are.
Anarchist is a subset of libertarian.
Don't call yourself a libertarian. You don't want to be associated with them. They have an entire net. They're a political group that's cast a wide net so they can get as many votes as humanly possible. You don't want to involve yourself in this group.
I am considering that. I haven't considered it from that perspective before, and I will consider it. I have been so far pretty committed to that terminology, and I admit that that's all it is. But more importantly, I don't even like my book. The word libertarian doesn't appear in it at all. The title is freedom, and it's do you believe in freedom? And it's like if to you the label if to you at least you say a libertarian is someone who believes in freedom, then I'm going to say, well, this is what then that's what this means.
See,
and I think most people would define libertarian as someone who believes in freedom.
I have started using the word independence instead, because independence hasn't been taken by other groups and skewed. The word freedom and the word liberty, not only are people tired of hearing it and don't actually think that it's a real thing anymore, but the word independence also has great roots because our founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence and freed us from the tyranny that is government. And then the people after them decided that they were going to implement things like taxes and tyranny.
Well, if you want to talk about practical labels, I think objectivist meets your criteria more for being innovative and direct. Even independence is overused.
No, I never hear anybody use the word independence. Do you? Who's the last person you heard use the word independence? I never hear anybody use it.
I mean, certainly more than freedom, or as much as freedom and liberty. Certainly,
that's not common in my circle.
No, but it has. No, you're right. You're right. It's not nearly as much used, but I would still put it in the same category of being essentially a cliche. Whereas objectivism is better. I think. For the reason you're an objectivist girl, I do think it is superior that way. Maybe I'd rather call myself an objectivist, but then that has.
It's not pure either, though. I mean. Yeah. That's the thing is that if brought to its logical conclusion, objectivism actually is anarchist.
Right, no, exactly.
So it's not, like, Ayn Rand got that wrong.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Don't get me wrong. And it's just a matter of, like, really, for those of us who believe what we know we believe, what is the best way of presenting that to the world? And this becomes a very, I don't want to say subjective, but an analysis that's very much based on one's individual experiences and assessments of very complicated issues and, lots of different factors interacting. And so I could be wrong, and I don't think there really is a wrong answer. But, in terms of saying I want to stick with the term libertarian as opposed to anarchist or voluntarist. Like, if anything, my preference would be voluntarist in terms of,
I don't know enough about voluntarist.
Huh?
I don't really know that much about voluntarism. I really don't. But I'll tell you what, based on what you were saying, like, to me, I get a lot of criticism using hyphens and, like, the anarcho-objectivism or anarcho-capitalism or whatever. But I think it's important to have those hyphens. I think what those hyphens are supposed to mean is, this is what I think my government should look like. I think there should be none. And this is how I choose to live my life and my philosophy for life, which is objectivism. And that's just it. When I say that to people, people know that they can hold me to certain standards, which is, I don't like government. Anything you mention in regards to things that the government does well, I'm going to disagree with you. And as far as objectivism is concerned, that I believe in rationality. I believe in working every day to not let my emotional viewpoint of the world override what is. And I suffer from that is-ought dichotomy myself. We all do it. But that's just the thing, is that we need to be able to separate the is from the ought. And we need to think about how life really is. And it's so hard, especially when you're in a conflict with somebody you care about, and you're just stubborn, and you're just really mad because you think you're right, but that's not what is, that's what ought.
Have you studied nonviolent communication?
I have. There's some really great videos on it. Trying to remember who did it.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. Nonviolent communication is something I'd recommend to anybody. This book, Marshall Rosenberg, is a really easy read, and it's so powerful as a methodology of communicating that can be summed up as, what do you need? How can we get along? And getting to that and getting rid of all the things that keep us from just being able to directly communicate in that sense. It's so powerful. And I think really the best word, again, using NVC is objective. It is, it is an objectivist thing to say, yes, I'm going to communicate to maximize my relationship value with other people. Duh. But but the term objectivism doesn't really include or specify that. And I would like there to be another word. And I think, the word Molyneux uses for it is philosopher. That your approach to life is as a philosopher. That philosophy is what leads to a good life, is what sets us apart from lower animals, is the product of the brain explosions, the ability to apply reason and logic and ultimately philosophy. And I don't know, maybe that word doesn't really capture it either, but it's, I wish there was a word. And I think objectivist or objectivism is the closest to...
I think so too.
A life methodology, but it also doesn't quite encompass enough.
Right.
I don't know.
I see where you're going with the philosophy, with the philosopher thing, but the problem with that is that it's like saying any philosophy, and there are some really bad philosophies out there. Don't even get me started on Kant. So, I know that Ayn Rand used parts of Kant's philosophy, but then again, we're going to use parts of everybody's philosophy, especially Aristotle, who, outdid us all. But the thing is that his philosophy as a whole is not doable.
Hold on. I want to point something out though, and this is, we need to think about philosophy as a concept as something different than, because if I said automobile engineering, you wouldn't say, oh, well, I like automobile engineering, but the 1975 Chevy Nova had some really bad fuel injection issues, and the carburetor was a little iffy. So, automobile engineering, I'm kind of, you wouldn't say that about that field, but you say that about philosophy, because philosophy has been so conflated with popular historical philosophers that have been, forced on people through.
Now, then what would you say objectively what philosophy really is?
It's, in a sense, it's like objectivism, but a more all-encompassing methodology, I guess.
Could be interesting.
But it's not a great word.
We could do a whole video on this. I'm going to do some research. That's awesome. I may do a video on this. What philosophy means at its core without all the different dogmas that are involved.
And honestly, it's not a word that I've tried to use to serve me in any particular purpose, so I haven't really given a lot of consideration. I'm really kind of talking out of my ass here, please don't get me wrong, but none of these labels are, something that I'm particularly concerned about. Because you keep going with this, where it's like, well, philosophy doesn't really encompass it, because it's really something more innate, and then eventually you just come full circle, and you're like, well, fuck it, I guess I'm a human being. I'm Adam,
Why do you think I created Objectivist Girl? So I could keep being Lauren.
Right.
What do you mean? Right.
And then you take off your superhero costume and your mask and reveal your real identity.
My real identity.
Objectivist Girl, really.
No, my real identity. I would say that I'm more powerful as Lauren than I am as Objectivist Girl. I like Lauren a lot more than I like Objectivist Girl. And Objectivist Girl's cool. She wants to save the world through, intelligent thought, but in ultimate, Lauren does some pretty cool stuff. So... But yeah, no, I would say Lauren's the superhero because she deals with the day-to-day life. Objectivist Girl gets on a camera and talks about all the things that Lauren knows.
Now I don't even know if I exist anymore.
She'd be nowhere without me. Objectivist Girl wouldn't have gotten anywhere without me. That girl...
I just debated a guy on my show today who took the Kokesh challenge, which is this video we just put out to say, come throw down and debate Adam about anything. And he's the heavyweight debate freedom champion of the world or something like that. My guest booker put it out, Anthony Antonello. It was brilliant. And we had our first challenger today, and he was just trying to make the argument against self-ownership. And it it was really fun to be able to use all of this and hone in on that, home in on that. But it was
You know, I got a nihilist for you. I'm going to send your way. There is a guy that seriously considers himself a nihilist. I've never met one. Like, I've never met a real nihilist.
We'll take all comers. You disagree with me on anything.
It's fascinating.
Come on my show and challenge me. Like, I love it. We'll schedule it. We'll make it happen. Like, we want to throw down. We want to debate, steel sharpening steel. But so far, I remain, unfortunately, undefeated.
Well, what? Oh, really? Oh, really? Well, we're going to have to fight then. That's going to be a thing. So I'll have to pick a good topic. So anyway, the point is that...
No, hold on. You're not going to find something significant enough to disagree with me on to make it worth coming on.
Really?
I've gone for something else.
You don't think you and I could disagree on anything significantly?
Try me.
Let's see. You're not religious, are you?
Nope.
Ah, darn it. That one's so easy.
That's shit.
Let's see. Where are you on IP?
Yeah, I figured that one out. Don't worry. It's a scam. I get it. It's a construct you could use hypothetically as a metaphor in voluntary contract, but the concept of intellectual property is a racket.
Okay, let's see. Can't fix you on that one. Let's see.
Try me. Come on. See, I told you. I got it all figured out.
Oh, okay. Which means I've got it all figured out. Are you trying to tell me I've got it all figured out so there's no way we could disagree?
Pretty much.
Wow, Adam. That's like the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. Well, the nicest thing anybody's not said to me, but I figured it out.
Yeah, well, that was certainly a presumption.
Well, this nihilist, okay, the point is that this nihilist, I want to tell him, the thing is that he wants to debate me, and I'm like, why would you want to debate me? You're not even sure if I exist. What's the point in debating me? Aren't you just a crazy person that's talking to yourself? That's silly. Seriously.
Bring it on.
I don't know why nihilists ever leave their house.
I'm live from noon to 2 on the interwebs, AdamVersusTheMan.com/live streaming 5 days a week, and I take Skype chats right here on the big screen. Adam Kokesh. Send me a Skype chat. Send me an email if you want ahead of time. We'll schedule you. Send my booker an email. You can talk on camera. You can throw down. We'll take all comers.
Are there any other things that you want to talk about, or any things that you want to pitch to my audience?
Include the link where you can, please, and check out,
of course,
the Freedom Communications Network charter. I should have showed that to you before we did the interview.
Yeah.
But I'll have you on my show eventually.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd love that. So remember, guys, knowledge is not for all men, but for those who seek it. So keep seeking.